Hello, I'm Paul Carroll, technical writer for Digital Photo Magazine, and welcome to this video tutorial on creating a solarized effect in Photoshop Elements. For a full explanation on solarization and how you can recreate it in Photoshop using the tone curve, have a look at the solarization in Photoshop tutorial, also on this month's CD. Photoshop Elements doesn't feature the tone curve in either its raw converter or the main image editing area, which means you can't create a solarized effect in the same way. However, as always with Photoshop Elements, there are ways round it, and in this technique I'm going to show you how to use the raw converter to convert our colour image of a lily into mono, then apply the solarized filter in the Adjust Colour Curves palette, improve the effect using a Levels adjustment layer, and then add a tone effect using a hue saturation adjustment layer. Okay, I'm just going to close down this final image and then we can get started. Start by opening the image lily.dng of this month's CD. That's going to open the raw converter. Now the first thing we want to do is crop the image just to recompose it and lose this messy area at the bottom of the stem. So to do that, up in the toolbar, click with your left mouse button on the crop icon, and from the menu select 2 to 3, which is going to constrain the proportions of our crop. Now click in the top left hand corner just above that bud, and holding down your mouse button, drag a crop box over the image, and we just want to ensure that we're taking in all of the leaf in the bottom left hand corner there, but cropping out those messy leaves at the bottom. Okay, now I'm just going to click on the hand icon in the toolbar, which applies my crop. And to convert to mono, we're just going to use the saturation slider, which is all the way at the bottom of the basic menu. So again, just clicking and dragging with your mouse, we're just going to take the saturation all the way to -100 to remove all the colour from our image. Now that's as far as we can go with the technique in the Elements raw converter. So now we need to click the Open Image button, which is going to launch our converted mono lily into the main image editing area. And there you go, you can see it on screen now. Next, we need to apply that solarization effect, and we can do that going up to the Enhance menu, down to Adjust Colour, and across to Adjust Colour Curves. Now solarization effects are created by manipulating the tone curve and inverting the tonal range. In Photoshop Elements, however, we only have limited control over the tone curve using these adjustment sliders. And a much easier way of creating a solarized effect is to use the Select to Style menu. And if you go to the bottom of the menu, you can see that we've got a solarized style. So just click on that, and if you can see in the after preview, the effect has been applied. So all we need to do now is click OK. So we've inverted the tones and we've got that basic solarization effect. It's looking a bit flat and a bit murky, however, so we're just going to pump up the contrast using a Levels adjustment layer. You can add an adjustment layer by clicking on this half black, half white circle at the bottom of the Layers palette. And as you do, you get a list of the different adjustment layers which can be applied. We're going to click on Levels, and that brings up our Levels adjustment palette. I'm going to start by adjusting the blacks. So click on the black adjustment point slider and drag it to the right, and I'm going to set on an input value of around 30. Next I'm going to adjust the gamma slider, and this time I'm going to move it to the left to an input value of 1.8, and you can see that that's really boosted the contrast in our lily. Finally, the white point slider, I'm just going to drag that to the left again, and this time I'm going to settle on an input value of around 190, which is just at the start of the pixels on our histogram graph. So I'm quite happy with my levels adjustments, and to minimize this palette, all I need to do is just click on this double right hand facing arrow in the top right hand corner of the palette, and that levels adjustment has been saved on the adjustment layer at the top of the stack here, and using the eye icon I can deactivate it, reactivate it to see the effect it's applied, or double click on the cogs here to bring back up the levels adjustment palette and fine tune my adjustments. Okay, so our elements image is starting to take shape, but I now just want to add some subtle toning just to give it an extra dimension, and again I can do that using an adjustment layer. So back down to the half black half white icon, bring up the menu, and this time I'm going to select hue saturation from the menu. We've desaturated all of the colour from our image during our raw conversion. So if I make changes to our hue slider, absolutely nothing happens because there's no colour in the file to be adjusted. So to apply a toning effect, I need to click on the colorize box, which is at the bottom of the palette. And you can see that's added a red tone, and our hue slider is all the way to the left here. Now you can experiment with which hues you'd like to tint with simply by clicking on the hue slider and dragging it to the right here, and you go through the full colour gamut of toning colours. I'm going to settle on a hue of around 30, which is a nice subtle sepia tone. The toning's a little bit strong for my liking here though, so I'm just going to click on the saturation slider and I'm going to knock that back. If you wanted a really garish tone, you could go all the way up to 100%, but I'm just going to knock it back to a saturation of around 10. Okay, so there we go. Just simply click on the double right hand facing arrow again to minimise that adjustment palette, and there we are. We've created our solarized effect in Elements. If you wanted to retain these adjustment layers, all you'd need to do is go up to the File menu, down to Save As, and you could save the document as a Photoshop file, or for a smaller compressed file, simply go up to the Layer menu, down to Flatten Image, and then you can save the image as a JPEG on your computer. So again, just File, Save As. In the Format box, we need to select JPEG, and then we can save this one as Lily Elements JPEG. Okay, I hope you've really enjoyed this technique. Give it a go using the start image of the CD in Photoshop Elements, and then you can get converting your own black and white images to mono and applying a great solarizing effect in the future. Alright, cheers.